what is IBS even? It's kind of like a made up
Right.
thing. It's really
Yeah.
just digestive issues, but that's a whole other subject. But it's funny. I think a lot of people can sort of have these physical symptoms and just not even realize it's due to the, suppressed trauma.
Mhm.
Okay. So then there might be someone who's like, how can you actually say that that's what it is? Like, this is some woo woo stuff. Like, is there any
Yeah.
science behind,
Yes.
like, no, this isn't just woo woo bullshit? Like, you can
Yes.
actually trace it back.
Yes. So for anyone that's like, "Oh, this is woo-woo BS," like, I highly recommend reading the book The Body Keeps the Score,
Yes.
Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine, What Happened to You by Oprah and Dr. Bruce Perry. Like, there is science and research around what happens when your body holds on to trauma and how it manifests. And also more recently, they're doing studies that IBS is like a nervous system dysregulation. So instead of it being like a stomach problem, which when you go to the doctor, you go to 5 different gastroenterologists and all this stuff, like,
Been there.
they're yeah, right? They're gonna say, like, "Oh, this is a stomach problem, we're not sure what it is," and now they're doing more of the research that actually it's a nervous system dysregulation, which is causing your stomach to be, like, having these, like, dysbiosis, SIBO, etcetera, kinda stuff happen to it.
It makes complete sense. And then what's interesting, I actually would love to have my sister on. This is like more her story, but she's an open book. But I
Yeah.
would love to hear her take on this because my sister actually ended up going to a trauma based rehab center. And she did like deep rooted for a couple of months or something, EDMR, like all of the things. And she ended up having fibromyalgia and all these physical symptoms due to kind of unleashing the trauma. So I mean, obviously, you don't know her experience, but just in general,
Yeah.
can sometimes trauma therapy almost be done the wrong way? Because it's interesting, like, what actually led to her trauma-based physical symptoms was unleashing the trauma, if that makes sense.
Completely. So that was my experience is that at
Okay.
22, like all of my trauma kind of came up. We lost 7 people in 2.5 years. And yeah, it was intense. And
Oh my
I
god.
like went into intense trauma recovery. And then 3.5 years in was when I was diagnosed with late stage Lyme and like multiple autoimmune conditions 3 weeks before we got married. So I was under high stress, planning a wedding, like helping run a business, all this stuff. And that was me as I was like, how come now that I'm in trauma recovery, I'm having all of these symptoms in my body show up, right? And it was because I was living so disassociated from my body. I was living so up here outside of my body. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to this. It's like I was feeling really glazed over, right? And that's like a good sign of disassociation. So for me, like after doing that intense trauma recovery for 3.5 years, like really intensely, was when I was like, holy crap, there's something wrong with my body. Like I'm in a lot of pain, but I kept on shoving it down and just ignoring it.
So, is it kind of like while you're in this trauma therapy, you're still doing the thing where you're trying to keep yourself safe from the trauma
100%.
therapy? Okay.
100%.
So
Yeah.
it's still the same route.
Yeah.
It's just you can be in trauma therapy and your body's almost working 10 times harder to disassociate, to keep yourself safe, and
Yeah.
therefore causing physical distress.
Yeah. Because that's the thing that's kept you alive is disassociating from the pain. Like that's a
Right.
healthy coping technique that we have. But when we stay in that place for too long is when the body goes into fight or flight. And then we have all these hormones and then that causes autoimmune disease, right? That's the stuff that happens.